We are so glad that you're here. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Myers, and we are so happy to have you here this afternoon at the second webinar in our Supporting Student Success with Interim Assessments Shared Practices webinar series, brought to you by the California Department of Education. Today's session is about the English Language Proficiency Assessments for California, or the ELPAC Interim Assessments. The last webinar will take place next week on October 1st and will be all about the CAASPP interim assessments. And with that, I think we're ready to begin. So I'm going to hand things over to my friend and colleague, Melanie Ambari, an education programs consultant with the CDE, who's going to start us off. Melanie, go ahead.
Thanks, Amy. Welcome, everybody. My name is Melanie. Today, I want to go over with you our big goals for today. This webinar is going to allow us to dive deeper into the ELPAC interim assessments. We hope that you leave today with a plan to promote ELPAC interim assessments locally, use interim assessments to support teaching and learning, to support students with ELPAC interim assessment resources and data, as well as have an opportunity to ask questions and get your answers directly from our presenters. So let's continue by reviewing our objectives for today. Today, you get to hear, not from me, but from 3 local educational agencies, or LEAs, who will be sharing with you their respective journeys as they've implemented the very new ELPAC interim assessments in their districts and classrooms. Each LEA will be sharing with you their steps to implementing the ELPAC interim assessments, their challenges and successes that they've encountered along the way. And at the end of each presentation, there will be an opportunity for you to answer your questions live. So please be sure to use the Q&A feature in Zoom to ask your questions for our presenters as they come to mind. In the event that we are unable to answer your question in today's webinar, you can also email us at elpac@cde.ca.gov, and the email address is at the end of your resource guide as well. So before I hand you off to your amazing presenters, I want to just briefly remind everyone about the use of interim assessments. ELPAC interim assessments are optional assessments intended to be used with students in the classroom to help support teaching and learning. These interim assessments can also be used to monitor student progress towards English language proficiency, including administering them in a non-standardized way to support the formative assessment process. One of our presenters today is going to share with you some more specific examples of a non-standardized administration option. ELPAC interim assessments can also be used with school staff for professional learning purposes. LEAs are encouraged to use them for these purposes, but it's important to remember that they are still considered secure testing materials, so treat them just like you would summative ELPAC testing materials. And lastly, keep in mind that California Education Code prohibits the use of interim assessments for any high-stake purposes, such as course placement, identification as gifted or talented, or reclassification of English learners. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce you to your presenters for this ELPAC Interim Assessments Shared Practices webinar. You are going to be hearing from 3 LEAs this afternoon: Woodland Joint Unified School District, Enterprise Elementary School District, and Healdsburg Unified School District. First up, we have Maria Medina from the Woodland Joint Unified School District.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to introduce our team. My name is Maria Medina. I am the coordinator for English Learner Services with Woodland Joint Unified School District. With us is Brandon Killian, our EL teacher on special assignment, and Chris Miner, who is an ELD teacher for our newcomers and Avid Excel at Douglas Middle School. It's good to be with you all today. Before we share our district's journey of how we got started supporting our students through the use of ELPAC interim assessments and the associated resources, we wanted to give you some background information about the students that we serve. Woodland Joint Unified School District is in Yolo County, just outside of Sacramento. Our district is made up of 17 schools. 11 of these are regular elementary schools. 1 is a charter elementary school. 2 are middle schools that serve students in grades 7th and 8th. 2 are comprehensive high schools that serve students in grades 9th through 12th. And 1 is a continuation high school serving students for the most part in grades 10th through 12th. With an enrollment in the year 23-24 of 9,483 students, 21% of our students are English learners, 17% are in special education programs, and 76% are socially, economically disadvantaged. Now I am going to hand it off to Brandon, who will be sharing with you how we implemented the ELPAC interim assessments from the district level.
Thank you, Maria. In our district, we decided to use the ELPAC interim assessments immediately after they were released in fall of 2023. We scheduled 2 administrations, one as soon as it was released and the second in late January, just before the summative ELPAC window opened. We asked classroom teachers in grades 1 through 12 to administer the listening and reading domains during their designated English language development or ELD classes, since those domains could be done in a group setting and were automatically scored by the system. For secondary students in grades 7 through 12, we also asked their teachers to administer the writing domain, as this could be done in a group setting as well, and then we crafted a plan for how to score them during a teacher workday. There was already a secondary ELD teacher action team or professional learning community in place. This group of ELD teachers and their EL specialists meet regularly to collaborate and plan instruction for our newcomer and long-term English learner students at the middle school and high school levels. Since our district was taking steps to formally implement professional learning communities or PLCs, including professional development for all of our staff around this topic, we took the ELPAC interim assessments as an opportunity to implement the PLC process in that setting. We scheduled 1 full school day to meet for this work. We reviewed the task types, including reading through the prompts students were given. We then opened up the training guide and exemplars provided by CDE and ETS and went through the rubrics and exemplars in order to calibrate and come to a common understanding of how to score our own students' writing. Lastly, we spent time actually scoring the writing. All teachers were given ample time to complete this. From a district perspective, one challenge for implementation was the scoring piece and being able to work that into the teacher's workday. We didn't want to add one more thing that they would need to do outside of their regular planning and instruction. Because we had already been meeting regularly with our secondary ELD teachers, and there are fewer total designated ELD teachers at the secondary versus the elementary, we decided to start with them. We decided to use a collaboration day where each teacher had a substitute in their classroom. That way they could learn more about the task types, the rubrics, and the scoring while we were all together in one place at one time. Some accomplishments that came from these steps were that teachers gained a much better understanding of the summative ELPAC writing domain. They have all administered the test before and seen some, if not all, of the questions, but now they knew what the scoring looked like and the expectations of the students. Teachers also learned how to enter scores into the teacher hand scoring system, or the THSS, and they learned how to retrieve results from the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS. Teachers also shared what the writing scores looked like for their students for each of the task types after they completed the scoring. Using this information, we collaborated on next steps, and this in turn informed instruction in their classes. Now let's hear from one of our middle school designated English language development teachers about his experience administering the ELPAC interim assessments in his classroom, Christopher Miner.
Hi, so like Brennan mentioned, in fall of 2023, all newcomer teachers of students grades 7 through 12 administered the ELPAC interim assessments in a standardized manner during their designated ELD class. For the first administration, ELD teachers gave newcomer students their assigned grade span specific ELPAC interim assessment. Testing sessions occurred over the course of a couple weeks to allow for normal instruction and mitigate some of the testing fatigue that we often see. This occurred during students' designated ELD class period based on their time in the program. The teacher workday that Brandon mentioned earlier, allowed for collaboration on a library of task types where teachers created practice items that address the goal of each identified task type, and the creation of student-friendly learning targets in order to understand the goal of each task type of the summative ELPAC. The tangible product is located in a shared folder that has a direct impact on classroom instruction for teachers of designated ELD students. In the second administration, we used the data from the first administration to build off existing practices around data chats with individual conferences and goal setting based on the students' results from the first administration. Once students realized where they needed to grow to make made working through the March Madness a little bit more bearable. For example, in one conference with an ELD3 student, we discussed how well she was doing with her writing, but that her reading score didn't reflect her quiz scores on her work in class. She then understood that she needed to be more attentive to the practice and the results for her reading. The second administration of the ELPAC interim assessment was given in February in a non-standardized manner. Students really appreciated the opportunity to work collaboratively in small groups, to respond to the more difficult reading and writing task types. Students also benefited from whole class teacher think alouds about how to address the challenges in the listening and reading sections. One ongoing challenge is explicitly connecting the task types and the outcomes for students while balancing day-to-day learning outcomes. For example, students still need to learn foundations of reading. We've got vocabulary, language functions, and grammar that we're still working on in addition to connecting to the LPAC. And our primary goal is to help students acquire English and not to fixate on a summative test outcome. During the non-standardized administration, some students had aha moments and wondered aloud why we didn't do the non-standardized version first so that they could have performed better on the standardized administration. However, we felt that since the summative LPAC testing window had opened and sites had begun testing, that it was best to allow sites the flexibility to choose the non-standardized for that second administration. And it helped because when we approached the summative LPAC, more students seemed motivated to perform well. They seemed to more clearly understand what was expected of them in each task. And then for next steps, which is this year, I'd like to conference and set goals with students. I'd like to use the LPAC practice tests to go over the task types and expectations for listening, reading, and writing. Then we'd like to administer the LPAC interim assessments, one, to establish a baseline and to provide ongoing instruction and intervention. Next, we'd like to administer the LPAC Interim Assessment 2 to track progress and measure impacts. And finally, after administering the summative LPAC in spring and receiving the results, we'd like to conference with students again to discuss and celebrate their progress, since we usually get scores back before the end of the school year.
Thank you. So we are at, excuse me, our first Q&A session. I see some of you have been dropping your questions into the chat. Please feel free to put anything that comes to mind in there. And Brandon, I see you'd like to answer our first question live. I'm going to go ahead and read that out loud. Did you work with other departments in your school district to organize the rollout of LPAC interim assessments?
Yeah, Maria, did you want to answer that or do you want me to?
Go ahead.
Okay. Yes, we worked with our teaching and learning department because they support us in terms of administering the summative LPAC assessments typically. And so last year, since the interim assessments were new, they also supported with those as well. They supported by helping us, they printed the DFAs for us. And then we worked with specialists at each of the site to make sure that those were those secure materials were, passed out properly and returned properly. So we did work with multiple parties in terms of rolling out the interim assessments. And then, Mr. Miner, did you want to maybe talk about the administering the same assessment to students?
Sure. So at the middle school level, we are a 7-8 middle school, so we don't have as long as maybe some of you who are working in the high school or the elementary school, where you might have them for 5 or 4 years, depending on your structure. But what we found, or one thing I would say, because last year we only had the same test to use, we didn't have 2 versions, is it really built the confidence of students. They felt a lot more ready to attack the summative assessments because they had seen the test before and they had a plan of attack for the types of questions.
There's another question about using LPAC interim assessments in grades K2. We did use them at the elementary level. In the resource guide that's been linked, there's a document that's actually our ELD assessment guide from last school year, where we kind of listed some timelines and what interim assessments we used with ELPAC. With kindergarten, we did not use the ELPAC interim assessment. However, with grades 1 and 2, we did do the reading and the listening, since those are automatically scored and can be done in a group setting. So it's a little bit more accessible for that age range.
I can add to that. This year in kindergarten, we are asking teachers to administer the listening and reading domain in a non-standardized way. So we're asking them to do it in small groups or whole class so that the students are still exposed to the questions and are still exposed to what they are probably going to see on the test, the format of the test, the layout of the test, that sort of thing. We are also doing the same thing for students in grade 1 this year, where we're asking teachers to do it in a non-standardized way during designated ELD.
Excellent, thank you. Okay.
Melanie, how are we doing on time? Should we answer more, or are we?
We're good on time for
Okay.
more. We can come back. It's up to you.
Yeah, there's just a question about how these were rolled out to primary grade teachers, since they're not typically giving CAASPP assessments and so on. So we, in our district, we actually have a site-based English learner specialist at each school. So those folks worked with their primary grade teachers in particular to make sure that they felt comfortable with using the platforms associated with the ELPAC interim assessment. And that's partially why we didn't do all domains, because we wanted to kind of have a slow start, so to speak. And so we provided kind of like some basic information that those EL specialists could then provide, work with their teachers to get them going on the interim assessments platforms.
There's the question about bargaining units and did we get pushback from teachers? I think that because we chose to administer the self-scored domains, the listening and the reading, there was no additional time required of the teachers who were administering the test. So we dealt with that problem that way. Additionally, Brandon helps us download all of our data from SIRS. So that is another layer of support that teachers are given.
Great. Thank you. So if you do think of a question for Woodland that comes up later, please drop it in the chat and we will probably have time at the end to come back. And like I said, if your question does not get answered or you leave here today and you're like, I wish I asked that, contact information is at the bottom of the resource guide for you. So Woodland, thank you so much for sharing your journey and for all the hard work that you've done for our English learners. Thank you. So now I'm going to present to you Tiffany Rodriguez from Enterprise Elementary School District, and she will share with you about their journey with ELPAC interim assessments.
Hi, my name is Tiffany Rodriguez, and I'm the Instructional Services Director at Enterprise Elementary School District up in Shasta County. I'm very happy to be here with you all today and share my district's journey of how we started in supporting our students through the use of the ELPAC interim assessments and the associated resources. So Enterprise Elementary School District, or EESD, is the largest elementary school district in Shasta County in Northern California. EESD has 9 schools, 4 serve TK through 5th grade, and 2 serve TK through 8th grade. There's 1 comprehensive junior high school, 1 alternative education school for kindergarten through 8th grade, and an independent study charter school TK through 12th grade. And then over these schools serving 3,404 students, there are 5.4% of students who are English language learners, 15.4% of students in special education, and 71.6% socioeconomically disadvantaged students. So now I'd like to walk you through our steps of implementation for the ELPAC interim assessments. We began by training all of our teachers 3rd grade and above in all interim assessments over a 3-part series by our instructional services team. Training 1 was how to administer interim assessments. Training 2 was called You Have Scores, Now What? And training 3 was all about how to hand score. All 3 trainings spoke to both CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments. So training 1 was held in November of last year at our district staff development day. All 3rd through high school teachers were asked to attend one of the 1-hour training options on our November staff development day when there were no students. Training number 1 was all about how to administer the CAASPP and ELPAC interim assessments and why they can benefit students and teachers throughout the year. In this training, teachers entered Test Operations Management System, or TOMS, and the testing interface and started looking at the interim assessments. We found it important to highlight the benefits of administering the interim assessments to create more buy-in. The list included that these interim assessments have the same feel and look as the state test, that teachers can see how students score on a specific area and use the data to adjust their instruction, that these assessments are relatively short and ideal to be used to show before and after growth on a standard. Interim assessments can be used in front of the class in the non-standardized format to show how a teacher would approach a question. Students had opportunities to practice the tools and supports throughout the year. And finally, testing in the interface would become more comfortable and normal for both the teachers and the students. So it kind of took away the novelty and the nerves of state testing. The second training was offered in November and December. It was offered twice, November and December, after school for anyone who wanted to attend and then be paid for their time. Since we struggle getting substitutes and we're trying to reach as many teachers as possible, this felt like the best option. We went over the scores they now had available and how to use that data to guide instruction. This training focused on the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS, and how to view the data. Teachers logged into their accounts and went over each aspect of their scores since they had administered an interim assessment. This included the students' overall scale scores, the item analyses, and the key distractors. The third training was offered in a session after school in January of 2024. This training highlighted the teacher hand scoring system, or the THSS, and looked at exemplars and considered which hand scored interim assessments they could administer in their classrooms. This was one of the best attended after school trainings of the school year. When we initially trained teachers to administer the interim assessments, we focused on being successful and starting small. One tip for our teachers was to choose interim assessments that will be scored by the system and not need hand scoring. So although this got people trying the system, we think that teachers saw the benefits of the interim assessments and wanted to explore those interim assessments that required hand scoring. So as we did each training, we actually would refer back to the same slide deck each time. And this slide deck became like an interactive notebook that teachers could reference when they were back in their own classrooms. All right, teacher expectations. So the teachers were asked to administer 4 interim assessments throughout the year, specifically CAASPP, English Language Arts, and Literacy, or ELA. Single subject math teachers could give math interim assessments, and teachers who taught all subjects could give math interim assessments as well, as long as they gave 4 in ELA. We did not require teachers to give the ELPAC interim assessments. However, as designated English language development teachers attended the trainings, some began using the ELPAC interim assessments of their own accord. So choosing the right interim assessment was important. And as mentioned before, we suggested that teachers start by using the ELPAC interim assessments that do not require hand scoring. The English language development teacher at our comprehensive junior high started having her EL students take the ELPAC interim assessments, specifically listening and reading. The teacher commented that she thought her EL students would score better on the summative ELPAC if they had more confidence. And this proved true. By practicing the listening and reading interim assessments, she reported that students started commenting on how the summative ELPAC was going to be way easier than they thought it would be. Also, we had some teachers use the ELPAC interim assessments in a more unconventional way. Because there are no CAASPP interim assessments lower than 3rd grade, some 3rd grade teachers use the ELPAC interim assessments for first and second grade with their lower achieving English only third grade students so that they could practice and have success in the testing system. All right, so because we focused our training efforts on the teachers who administer the CAASPP assessments, we completely missed training the kindergarten through second grade teachers. It was no surprise that none of them decided to try using the ELPAC interim assessments with their English learner students. Most have no experience with the format of the test operations management system, TOMS, California Educator Reporting System, SERS, or the testing interface. And then 2 of the other junior highs that have very small designated English language development classes did not consider using the ELPAC interim assessments because we didn't require it. The teachers who teach the designated English language development classes were often more focused on administering CAASPP interim assessments in their core subjects, such as English or math. So they didn't really even consider the ELPAC interim assessments. But this year, 30% of students at our comprehensive junior high school who had plenty of practice from using the ELPAC interim assessment scored a level 4 on the summit of ELPAC, and 80.6% of students increased at least one performance level. In comparison, the same school had 22% of students score level 4 on the summit of ELPAC in the previous year, and 55% increased by a level. Because we were able to highlight this junior high school success, teachers of several of our other schools are now asking more about the ELPAC interim assessments so that they can be more successful as well.
Okay, so I am going to give Tiffany a second to look at the questions in the Q&A while I remind you all that Kasha has been putting into the chat a link to a Google folder that has the PowerPoint for today, as well as the resource guide attached. And the resource guide also has links of resources that our presenters have talked about that they're able to share with you. Some things they're not allowed to share, but the things that they were able to share are linked there, as well as at the very bottom, you have the contact information that I had mentioned for your presenters, as well as us here at the CDE. So that is your resource guide and your PowerPoint. Kasha has been dropping it into the chat. It's also in the Q&A. Okay, Tiffany, you ready? Okay. So the first question I see you want to answer live is, what role did site administrators play in the teacher buy-in for ELPAC interim assessments?
This was really important, and I really wanted to highlight that in this because the teachers, they were basically told you're going to do 4, and it kind of came as a shock to them. But the administrators, I made sure that every single administrator came to a training on how to do it, and luckily we have such great instructional leaders that anytime something came up, they would bring up how useful the data was, and they would just bring up any part of those benefits, how their students were more confident. And I think this year we're going to have even more because now that we've gone through state testing after this too, everything just went so much more smoothly. So because they were able to be in the training and see the benefits themselves, I think that they were able to have those side conversations with their teachers. Okay, let me see. Oh, I see a couple questions about the digital notebook or the slides. If you email me, I have a good copy. I can send you guys. It's a Google Slides. I didn't want to put it up there because I have screenshots, and sometimes websites change, and if the screenshots could change. So if you want it, I'll send it to you, and then just know that you can you'll have your own copy and you can change it as you see fit.
If we get to the end, Tiffany, maybe if we get to the end of the webinar and we have time, maybe you could pull it up and screen share at the end.
I'd love to.
Okay. That'll give you time to get it queued up. So
yeah, I'll get it up and ready.
Okay.
I can answer, what role did the district have in interim assessment implementation? I mean, the district, it came from the district in my department's level and went down through everyone else. I know that we had some teachers that were kind of dabbling, but once we actually asked everyone to do at least 4 and had everyone go to a required training, it really the ball just started getting rolling. And what's amazing is kind of like the playground model, those that come and play on the playground were having fun, were having success. So then the teachers that maybe weren't as quick to joined pretty quickly. Are you able that digital notebook? Yep, we'll talk about that later. I don't know if I see any other ones, Melanie. Maybe I'm missing.
Don't see anything else either.
Okay.
Okay. What role did the district have in the interim assessment implementation? Did you answer that? I'm sorry, I was typing.
Yeah, I did. Just that, I mean, it really was, we were pretty heavy-handed, and we plan on starting again soon. I have communication going to go out to my teachers again saying we're in interim assessment, like windows, here we go. And we kept them in specific windows. We also have site collaboration processes down. So those windows became very important. You're speaking to your interim assessment data specifically, and that kind of helped them stay within the window.
Perfect. A lot of people want to see your slides. Okay, so we will definitely, we'll give Tiffany time to get them set up. And at the end of our last presentation, we will for sure have time, and Tiffany can share her screen and give you a sneak peek to her magical slide deck. Okay, thank you, Tiffany. If any other questions come in, please drop them in the chat. And again, Tiffany, thank you so much for leading your district through this interim ELPAC interim assessment journey. Okay, up next, we have our next presenter, Dr. Dennis Perez from Healdsburg Unified School District, and he's going to share with you their journey with ELPAC interim assessments.
Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Dennis Perez. I'm so excited to share how the launching of the ELPAC interim assessments worked out for me as a high school ELD teacher. I have taught 30 years of teaching, including teaching several levels of ELD. Healdsburg Unified School District is located in rural Sonoma County, approximately 60 minutes north of San Francisco. We are a city of about 11,000 people. We are a basic aid district that serves 1,240 students from TK through 12th grade. HSUD provides one comprehensive high school, one alternative ed high school, one junior high school, and 2 elementary schools. Included in our overall student population are 18.9% English learners, 14.8 students in special education, and 60.8 who have been identified as socially disadvantaged students. This is my story of our steps of implementation at Healdsburg High School. For the first year, my approach was to show the ELPAC interim assessment via the interim assessment viewing system, discuss how to tackle each item type, support navigation, encourage collaboration, and then debrief with my students. I love this picture in this slide because it captures my students fully engaged with the interim assessment on the big screen while using the interim assessment viewing system. Their focus on the assessment in small groups while taking notes and preparing for discussions show their comfort in the process. A key strategy that was beneficial during the process was note-taking, as it helps students feel more prepared and confident in tackling the questions. Overall, this approach provided a greater sense of readiness for the ELPAC than the practice did previously. I focused on using the non-standardized manner of administration of the ELPAC interim assessment this year to teach students how to navigate the 4 domains. I utilized the interim viewing system as a tool to pause, collaborate, and discuss what to expect during the spring summative ELPAC. Both my newcomers and advanced ELD students practiced logging into the secure browser until they were comfortable. About 2 months before our district planned to administer the summative ELPAC, we intensified our focus, starting with reading and writing. These were areas where students typically struggled, followed by the speaking and listening ELPAC interim assessments. The students knew that they weren't being judged for right or wrong answers, but were instead supporting each other in getting ready for the summative ELPAC. This strongly represented how the ELPAC interim assessments were used this past year. The non-standardized option had even a greater impact, as students focused on language learning rather than grades. This approach is one I plan to continue in the 2024-25 school year. We enjoyed some significant early accomplishments during our first year of IA implementation. The accomplishments included how students excelled in collaborative groups, discussing and understanding the expectations for each domain of the ELPAC. The students were engaged in sharing the experiences of how the IAs were for them. I really liked watching them work out the instructions were and utilizing the note-taking to help talk through the processes. I believe another accomplishment with the collaboration was consistent practice with interim assessments, especially in the month leading up to the summative LPAC. This consistent practice helps students become familiar and confident with the process. As students completed the LPAC, they shared how much the regular and frequent practice using the IAs helped them feel comfortable during the taking of the LPAC. Within all the frequent practice, the interim viewing system was the standout IA tool. The viewing system served as a model and driving force behind practicing for the LPAC. When we combined the viewing system with note-taking during practice, students began to not just accelerate in their understanding of the IAs, but also the content as they felt an authentic sense of what the LPAC would be like for them. The IAs truly mirrored the expectations and rehearsal necessary to increase their readiness levels of the LPAC. Integrated into the accomplishments within the collaborative and frequent practices were student input. Students' daily feedback was essential to improving instruction. Early on, they asked me to slow down, speak louder, and pause to re-explain. For example, when reviewing instruction, we would stop to check for understanding. To address this, I made adjustments during the viewing system sessions by starting each section with a detailed explanation on how to answer or address each part. I also used my bilingual aid to help newcomers by translating instructions and guiding them through the process. Finally, rounding out my students' accomplishments include highlighting the overall growth in the LPAC scores. Most students, whether they were returning or newcomers, improved on either the year before or from their initial LPAC scores. By the time of the summative LPAC in April 2024, my students were confident in accessing the portals and working collaboratively and working independently to complete the IAs in the LPAC. This was evident in their ability to enter the room, power on their computers, access a secure browser, input their ID numbers accurately, and begin the session. During our non-standardized interim assessment practice, students worked in teams, discussing how to navigate the IA sites and helping each other understand the process for completing each domain. On test day, this collaborative practice paid off as students retained the knowledge needed to navigate the site and complete the test independently. They approached the summative LPAC with the same confidence and familiarity they developed during the interim assessments, resulting in overall score improvement. We also had some challenges that actually helped us understand how to approach the LPAC preparation better as we utilize the IAs. These challenges included transition to the new system, the shift from using the LPAC practice test to the new LPAC interim assessments required learning to use a secure browser available through our district network. Initially, there was a challenge in remembering to sign in and out back into the circuit. A smaller and maybe trivial issue was coordinating providing students with their SSID numbers. Initially, coordinating with the school to obtain these numbers involved just looking up individually the student SSIDs. As we began to coordinate and streamline the retrieval of the SSID numbers, closer communication with the assistant principal helped obtain index cards with student names and SSID numbers on them. This year, I'll send an email request to administration staff to receive the index cards and ID numbers for distribution early. I think like anything, new communication and learning curves were a common occurrence, and we were no exception to the rule. Getting everyone, teachers, bilingual assistants, and students on the same page took some trial and error. However, through consistent practice, the class overcame the learning curve, and the initial challenges of navigating the LPAC interim assessments diminished with regular use. A final challenge appeared as we neared the LPAC testing. While students were feeling more confident, they were also showing signs of being tired and fatigued over the preparations using the IAs. I noticed that administrating the summative LPAC after spring break and well into April, my students were naturally looking ready to be done. It would be remiss not to include a conversation about student voice and the use of interim assessments, as they were actively involved with the IAs and LPAC. Student voice was really important to us, especially student feedback. After the summative LPAC, I asked students to provide feedback via Google survey and a discussion on how the LPAC interim assessments helped them prepare for the actual exam. We have placed in the resource section of the webinar a copy of the survey, but I will highlight for you the takeaways students shared from that survey. Firstly, understanding the process. Students consistently reported that the LPAC interim assessments helped them understand the summative LPAC process through practice and exposure to various examples. Secondly, the students also shared that learning from mistakes were important and not just taking the IAs, but preparing for the LPAC. They were able to talk about their answer choices in the non-standardized administration, and the students found it helpful to discuss why they have chosen or given an incorrect response on the LPAC interim assessment, which they had shared led them to learn, improve, and perform better on the summative LPAC. In the area of being prepared, students reported that practicing with the LPAC interim assessment and interacting with the different IA task types of the interim assessments viewing system made them feel more prepared through practice and becoming familiar with the LPAC expectations. Finally, as highlighted in a few sections today, students indicated that collaboration was important to them in their LPAC preparations for the IAs. Many students showed that working together with their teacher and classmates was a significant benefit, making the interim assessments a valuable tool in their summative LPAC preparations. The final section today are the next steps with the IAs and the LPAC preparations I have shared with my district and school. These steps include an early start with the IAs. I have begun preparations already for the LPAC interms this month. This allows returning English learners to review the process and provides newcomers ample time to learn how to navigate and take the assessments. Next would be to continue the frequent practices. I will implement regular practice sessions to build students' confidence and competence in navigating the interim assessments and understanding the content across all 4 domains. I will continue the best practices from last year. And an important next step will also be to integrate practice of the interim assessment into the language development instruction. This year, I will apply what I learned from last year's experiences with the interim assessments, particularly my understanding of the assessment viewing system, to enhance ELD instruction for our English learners. This approach will not only help students prepare for the test, but also support their ongoing language development. I will specifically align the current curriculum with the style of questions used in the interim assessments. This authentic approach should strengthen students' language skills across all 4 domains, while increasing their comfort and confidence in performing well on both the interim assessments and the LPAC. Finally, administer the summative LPAC earlier, as I suggested. I have already moved the summative LPAC testing to March, nearly 4 weeks earlier than last year and before spring break. This adjustment aims to improve instructional readiness and strategically utilize interim assessments before spring break with the goals of higher scores, progress of the LPAC, and making sure my students feel comfortable taking it. Thank you again for listening to me, and I send it back to Melanie. Get ready for questions.
Yep. So I'm going to give Dennis a second to look at the question that popped on there. Actually, that last question, I would love if all the presenters wanted to check it out, and if they had any thoughts, let me know. While they're reading that question and getting their thoughts lined up, just a reminder again, the PowerPoint, the resource guide have been dropped in the chat. They're dropped in the Q&A. The slides are there. The resource guide with resources that our presenters could link and share with you are there, as well as the presenter contact information and contact at the CDE for you to reach out to.
All right. Well, I'm very much like to address that question of about the backlash of those who claim you're just teaching to the test and take up instructional time. I come from the world of both administration, teaching, and coaching. And I think the best way to see great results are modeling and giving students time to prepare for any type of performance, whether it's learning or anything. And while some might claim that yes, there are components that look like we're teaching to a test. Really what we're doing is preparing students to understand a process. And as I mentioned earlier in my goals, is integrate these great intern assessment opportunities within my own curriculum. Matter of fact, we as a result of this experience, I also got the opportunity to adopt a brand new curriculum that is even more engaging for students and be able to partner that with the interim assessment practice.
One thing I'd also share from like the teacher perspective is our site has a parallel program with Avid Excel that supports our long-term English language learners. And part of my job as the coordinator is to share that information for our certification every year. And both of our Avid Excel teachers had basically reduced their English language learners by an entire section. And both of them use the interim system. So I would share the data, pointing out that it's allowing our students to be successful, and not that it's the only reason that they're successful, but knowing how to be successful on this assessment is helpful. And then the other thing I would maybe share is that when we talk to our colleagues who are maybe not English teachers or ELD, designated ELD teachers, and showing and discussing with them the challenges of the actual ELPAC and how in some cases it's more difficult than the actual ELA a summative assessment, kind of helps them understand why additional preparation might be important and helpful to our students.
Great, thank you. Dennis, I think this question is for you from Victoria about the curriculum you adopted after you started using the interim assessments. Are you comfortable answering that?
I am. It sounds like I'm going to do a plug for a company. Would that be more appropriate to send it personally, or it doesn't matter to me? I believe in the product, so.
You're sharing your personal experience.
Yes, I adopted Cengage National Geographic Lift with a online component called Spark. The reason why I did that is because it allows me to immerse in all 4 language domains almost simultaneously. And it became a perfect partner for my use of interim assessment. So previous things I was using were piecemealing things together, and I was struggling to really time manage my time planning to delivery to assessment to getting back out to instruction and so on in preparation for language development. So I've been working with this company for a while. It became a next generation. It used to be called, or it still is called Edge, but the new generation is called Lift. And I'm able to use it in a way that I will be able to use online components for assessment, getting data, and then turn around and practice with interim assessments and come back into Lift and practice the reading, the speaking, the listening, and writing. And it's going to be a huge tool for me this year to move my advanced ELD kids into RFECT and beyond, and moving my young newcomers through that early language development into their next few years. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then Woodland, would you like to share, Brandon?
Yeah, for curriculum that we were using at the middle school, high school level, we're using, for our newcomers, we're using National Geographic's Inside and Edge curriculum. So Inside is for the middle school, Edge is for the high school. For our long-term English learners, at least at the high school level, we're using English 3D. And then Chris, do you want to speak to Avid Excel?
Yeah, and you can probably add to this. Our district has been using Avid Excel as a designated support for our long-term English language learners. I believe we were going through federal program monitoring last year, and we've made it through twice using Avid Excel as a designated support specifically for our long-term English language learners.
Great, thank you. I have a question because I was listening and learning, as you all were, for Dennis, for you. Can you expand on how the ELPAC interim assessments helped contribute to a positive attitude that your students took towards taking the summative ELPAC?
Yes, absolutely. I've been in this business for about 15, 16 years now when we administered the SELT. And some of the years of just seeing students painfully going through the years of having to take this test without understanding why and not really being educated why. And we went, and as we moved to the LPAC, it was my goal to make sure that students feel comfortable and understood that this was a process that will help them not just gain language acquisition and redesignation, but it's a measurement, it's a tool. I said, just like you're out there on a sports team and you do practices to see how well you're doing, this is a measurement that was going to say where you're at with your language use and use that to help you grow greater in the future. And that approach and a lot of conversation with students, a lot of conversations with our counselors in the room too, a lot of conversations with our administrators in the room too. We emulated what it looks like to take this test as seriously as schools take the CAASPP and other state testings like AP. And as a matter of fact, this year, I'm asking us to move us into the isolated, quiet areas of the campus like they do for AP and CAASPP. So we have that element of seriousness, purpose, and show the kids that this is meaningful and keep that positive attitude for the kids going. And, you know, we celebrate too. We celebrated with parties halfway through and at the end and just celebrated their successes and showed them and thanked them for the work that they put in. And that's how we get the buy-in, you know, and really show them the purpose and celebrate with students and just be there present with them as they're walking through this journey with the LPAC, with the interim assessment.
Thank you. Sorry, all the questions are coming in. It's great. It's raining questions. I'm trying to pull out some. I really liked, where did it go? The question, do you recommend still using the practice test, so the ELPAC practice test in conjunction with the ELPAC interim assessments? Brandon, off with your thoughts on that?
Yeah, what we've been doing since the ELPAC interim assessments have been released is kind of recommending to parents and families that is a resource for them to use at home as well, so that parents and families can also see get a glimpse of what the summative ELPAC assessment looks like. But as far as in the classroom, if a teacher maybe just wants to familiarize students, for example, with the primary grades, that might be an easy intro to use the practice test, as you can go in as a guest instead of using the SSID login and so on. That's kind of how we've gone about it so far.
Can I piggyback on that? Additionally, during our ELAC parent meetings, just before the summative LPAC window opens, we encourage parents to have the kids log on to the practice tests on TOMS and have the kids practice that way. And we encourage that they practice the grade above, the grade below, the grade that they're at. So as additional practice from home, it gives the parents a good idea of what their kids are going to be asked to do on the test as well.
I'd also add that before taking the interim assessments in a standardized way for our ELD students, using the practice test is a great way to kind of model some of those attacking strategies before they jump into that first kind of baseline interim assessment in the classroom.
And I would jump in and echo the same thing. We're not ditching the practice. We're probably going to be integrating it even further as necessary. One thing that I think I didn't mention while I was using the interim assessments, we started at some of the lowest levels just to give students an opportunity to navigate in a comfortable sense, especially for the newest comer or the new. And as we went through the months of practice, we got closer to what their grade levels were, and then we were at the grade level just before the LPAC.
Excellent. Thank you. I love this question. It got 2 thumbs up, so it's a very popular question. I'm just curious, why didn't anyone talk about the importance of using or practicing the resources and designated supports on the interim test for students? It is so vital that the teachers and students know how to use these features work before the actual summative exam. I found many teachers and students don't know how these features work. Tiffany, did you want to answer?
Yeah, actually, when we do our trainings, we end up talking a little bit about that because we try to get the teachers to understand if they use the interim assessments, they can practice these. You can see what it looks like and what they do when they have these tools in front of them. Otherwise, in the summative, some of those tools actually become more distracting. They try masking, they try putting on sound, they do things that that they wouldn't otherwise do, and kind of it becomes a distraction and they start playing with them. So with accommodations and the designated supports both, we try to make sure that everything's updated, and our teachers know exactly what's given to the students. So it's also been a really good check for us when they're like, it's not showing up, it's not showing up, how do we find it? Every once in a while something has moved, or their understanding of what the tool was is not what they thought it would actually do. Maybe they didn't listen to our training very well. And so then they get to see that in action, and the students get to see it, and then they can decide this was actually helpful or this was not.
Great.
Yeah, and well, go ahead.
I was about another thing. So if you're still on this train, I'd say stay on it.
And you're right. I didn't really touch upon some of those tools because I spent a lot of time just talking in a general sense, but we did break down some of those and had a lot of conversations. And I would also agree that some of them became distractions. They weren't liking them. Some of the highlighting tools just wasn't being used. We walked through how to do them. The biggest tool, as I mentioned, was showing them how to effectively take notes. So when they're answering questions and using those notes like they're allowed to do, it supported them being able to identify and answer the questions.
And then I saw a question about using supplemental supports in addition to core curriculum for designated ELD. So absolutely, we're not bound to using only the core curriculum. We're absolutely taking different pieces from other places and supports to help our students. I think as far as a time or percentage, it really depends on the unit and what the students need at that moment to access the material we're trying to teach. So I can't say it's like 50-50, 75-25. Our goal is to kind of meet the students where they're at with the supports that they need, and we'll pull those from wherever we need to get them.
Okay. I actually selected that I would answer a question live that I wanted to chat a response to. So I'm just going to answer it live. Someone asked about getting results in SIRS. Do you need to complete all 4 domains? If I just do the listening, for example, will the results show up in SIRS? You do not need to do all 4 domains. Whatever you complete, once that testing session is done and the student submits that test, then SIRS will, however long it takes, then SIRS will generate the score report for just what the student did. So if the student just did listening, you'll get score on that. If they did all 4 domains, you'll get all 4 domains. I see Tiffany's hand is up, so I'm going to let you speak to it too.
Well, yeah, and we had teachers that they just got really excited about the title of one. They didn't preview the IAB before, and then they gave it, and then they weren't getting their results, and it's because there were some hand scored items. So if there are hand scored items, you will get no results until those hand scored items are scored.
Okay. And then kind of tying into that, do students need to take the CAASPP ELPAC interim assessments in one sitting? No, it is just like the summative in that it is not a time test and there is that flexibility. However, just be cognizant of those pause rules when it comes to stopping in the middle of a test. Okay. I do want to give Tiffany just a few minutes to screen share. We're going off script here, everybody. So we're going to give Tiffany just a few minutes just so you can see what that training slide deck looks like. We'll let her drive the screen for a little bit, and then we'll come back and wrap up and get y'all out of here early on this Tuesday afternoon.
All right, I'm just gonna look. Can you see my screen, Melanie?
Yes.
You. Okay. So this is what our IABs in the classroom looks like. It's a little wild looking. And then we always put the reminder, you have to sign your affidavit and TOMS. It is shocking how many people don't do this before they try to give the IABs. So we just say that. Like I said before, we use the same notebook for all 3 trainings, but this is training number 1, how to administer. This is training 2, you have results, and now what do you do? And then this is training 3 with hand scoring and writing. But I don't break it up on the table of contents because they can always refer back to it. Like in the presentation, I spoke to the benefits of giving the IABs. And actually this bottom quote kind of can align to the question that we had about the teacher backlash. But someone said this in one of the trainings and we added it this year. And it was a teacher. It was a pretty sports driven teacher. He said, you would never ask your sports team to play in the big game without practicing, having strategies, and feeling like they can win. So although some may think that you're teaching to the test, it is different content. So instead, we're just trying to help our students feel successful. And then I mentioned all of these in the training. So as you go through, if you end up emailing me and I send this to you, you can see the benefits. We always point to the official website and keep going to their resources because they are the most up to date. So it's really nice that they already have them there. Sometimes we just point to them. We took a picture and kind of explained this is what each of these things mean, kind of in layman's term for our teachers. Like this may be different for your school. Actually, I should make that a little bigger. But instructional services will take care of this for you. Maybe that's different for you. So if you end up taking this, you might want to check things. And then as we get in there, we start talking about choosing your IAB, and we keep talking about the purposes and why. When would you give one? Before you start a unit to determine where to focus, after finishing a unit, mid-teaching unit to guide instruction. We constantly talk about the non-standardized portions. You can always take an IAB as a teacher to show them how you work through questions. We keep going back to certain websites and things so they can see it. And then we want the reminders before you test. Although the IABs can be non-standardized, we often find that it's helpful that they know ahead of time what they need to have. And if you are trying to make it feel like the state test, then we kind of go through the standardized part too in the training. And then if you keep clicking as you go through this, we're a power school district. This is why I didn't share it out openly ahead of time. Like you may look different to you, but you would know to put a slide about how to get the information for your students. And then we kind of go into all of the other pieces on administering the tests and so on and so forth. I feel like since I'm off script, I don't really know where to stop, Melanie.
You're good. You're good.
There's the table of contents.
Thank you. And I want to clarify. So Tiffany, if you didn't pick up on it, this training is not just ELPAC interim assessments. They train their district in all interim assessments. We just snagged her for ELPAC and we're like, we want you to present. So just a heads up, you heard like IABs referred to, we're talking all like the interim assessment platform here.
But like I had mentioned, we did not require ELPAC IABs this last year because we knew that if you're an EL student, you're going to be asked to do your ELA and math in your other class. So we were like, we don't want to overtest them. We want to make sure they feel good. But then that junior high with her designated ELD class was like, they can do this. She started sitting in the training and she started looking around and she's like, this would help them so much. And their scores just skyrocketed. I mean, these kids felt like, and they actually kind of understood the difference between the CAASPP and the ELPAC a little bit better compared to big, scary state testing and weird testing that only I have to do because I speak another language. Like they really started getting into it and it was really, really helpful for them.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Tiffany. Okay, so we'll bring the slides back up. So that's going to conclude our Q&A session. As I said, questions are still welcome. Just because the session's closed and the webinar's over, we don't want you to, the brainstorm is going, the juices are flowing. Let's get those questions out while they're still in your mind. At the end of your resource guide is contact information for all of our presenters, as well as contact information for the CDE. So please, please, please do not hesitate to reach out to anybody that you have a question for, so that we can continue to help you with your ELPAC interim assessment journey. Okay, so before we go, I do have a closing activity that I would love to lead us in, and that is going to be a waterfall in the chat box. So I don't know if we have to open the chat box, but in a moment, I would love for you to share what barrier has been removed for implementation of ELPAC interim assessments by attending this webinar. So please, please, please make it rain in the chat box. What barrier to implementation has been removed by attending this webinar? Making it accessible, not so scary. Just do it. I love it. Just do it. You can't go wrong. Teacher buy-in. Time is now. Yes.
The time is now. I like that one, Melanie.
Right? Just do it. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Effective filter lowered. Yes, students are familiar with the platform, the testing interface.
I see some gratitude for our presenters. They did a great job.
They did. Differentiate takes integration with instruction. Love it.
Just some
Great.
better understanding of the interim assessments. That's great, so, especially since they're new.
I feel like I can train my team now. Yay, we love that. That's awesome. And doing it non-standardized is okay. Yes, it's a good little thing you can do to open class up or something. I love it. Mystery is removed. Nice.
So many good things.
Yes.
All
Excellent.
right. Well, I'm going to go ahead with our ending slides, if you don't mind. Melanie, what do you think?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right. So we encourage you to subscribe to our assessment spotlight. The communication goes out every Friday and includes the latest updates from our assessment division, and the instructions are in your resource guide. Also, you can follow us on X, and our X handle is @CDE Assessments. You can also follow the CDE on Instagram and Facebook as well, and I think also LinkedIn, but I'm not sure on that one. So definitely follow us on social media. We have some great things out there. And then also don't forget to come again next week when we're going to be talking all about the CAASPP interim assessments. That'll be on October 1st from 3:30 to 5 p.m. It's a great opportunity to hear from your colleagues from around the state and get ideas for local application for to inform your practices. So hopefully we will see you there. And with that, that is all. Thank you all so much for coming today. I feel like it's been a really good experience. We all got a lot out of it today. Thank you so much to all of our wonderful presenters. And with that, hopefully you got all of your questions answered. But if you didn't, you can always email us at elpac@cde.ca.gov. And thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And have a great week. Bye, everybody.